Someone said to me, "Go home, you broke, jobless old lady. What are you doing on this trip for free?" I'm so disappointed in my family. As usual, I decided to deal with them while taking some alone time away from my family. My brother called me and asked, "What did you do?" My name is Lucy. I'm 30 years old and work at an office. I've been dating a wonderful guy named Alan for about 3 years. We met in college where he was a senior. I often asked him for advice on work and personal issues. He always listened carefully and gave good advice. After we started working, we kept meeting up, and one day he told me he loved me. We began dating, and things have been going well ever since. We're even thinking about getting married soon. One day, Alan proposed to me, saying, "Lucy, I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" I said yes, and we decided to get married. We told our families about our engagement. When I met Alan's family, his mother was really nice to me. She was kind and friendly, and we had a lovely time together. She even gave me a lot of compliments, which made me a bit shy. The meeting went well, and I felt relieved. Next, I had to introduce Alan to my family, which made me feel down. The reason is, I don't really like my family. My parents were both very good at sports and got into college on athletic scholarships. They expected me to be good at sports too, but I wasn't. They made me try different sports like basketball, swimming, table tennis, and figure skating, but I was never good at any of them. I was only average at sports, which wasn't good enough for my parents. They were clearly frustrated with me. When my brother Kyle was born, they had high hopes for him in sports too. Kyle turned out to be very good at soccer. The local youth coach said he had talent, and my parents were thrilled. They shifted all their attention to Kyle, calling him a genius and treating me like a disappointment. As I grew older, my parents paid no attention to me. I focused on my studies and did well, but they said it didn't matter. When I wanted to go to college, they said they couldn't afford it, so I had to rely on scholarships. Meanwhile, Kyle continued to excel in soccer and even got a soccer scholarship to high school. My parents were overjoyed and believed he would go pro. Kyle started to look down on me and insult me, saying things like, "You're a loser and a burden. Mom and Dad don't like you. If you weren't here, they could invest more in me." My parents never stopped him, and his insults hurt my self-esteem. Even though I got into a good college and landed a good job, I still felt unimportant compared to Kyle's successes. My parents were prouder of Kyle than ever while I worked hard to pay back my student loans. Kyle was still living at home, getting all the love and attention from my parents. He was in college and playing soccer, but he couldn't go pro in the end and had to find a job. Despite this, my parents were still proud of him, and he continued to live happily at home. Every Christmas, when relatives came over, my parents introduced me as their disappointing daughter and Kyle as their pride. Even when relatives tried to say something nice about me, my parents brushed it off, insisting Kyle was much better. This always made me feel upset. Eventually, I stopped going to these gatherings and was hesitant to introduce my fiancé, Alan, to my family. Alan knew about my family's behavior, but wanted to meet them anyway. So after many years, I decided to call my mom and tell her the news. Her response was cold, and she barely acknowledged me. I told her Alan wanted to meet the family, but she seemed indifferent and suggested we just get married without a meeting. Then Kyle's voice came through on the phone, mocking the idea of meeting Alan and saying he wanted to see how lame my fiancé was. When Kyle said he wanted to invite us, Mom agreed. I was upset but decided to visit my family on my next day off. I prepared myself for the possibility that they might treat me badly. Yeah, I get it. If that phone call was any indication, Your family is quite something, Alan said. I explained that it had been tough dealing with them and apologized, but since we were getting married, Alan insisted on meeting my family. We agreed to keep it short and then leave. We drove to my family's home. When we rang the bell, no one answered, so I used my key to let us in. In the living room, I saw my family sitting on the sofa and was surprised to see a young woman I didn't know. I decided to greet everyone. Hi everyone, it's been a while. This is my fiancé Alan. Nice to meet you all. As I introduced him, my family looked at Alan, and Kyle made a rude comment that even made Alan awkwardly chuckle. Kyle then introduced the woman next to him. This is Em, my wife. We've been living here since we got married. I was shocked. Wait, you're married? I asked, wide-eyed. Yeah, last year, Kyle replied. I couldn't believe it. My mom looked annoyed and told me it wasn't my business. I was stunned that Kyle had married without telling me. When Dad addressed Alan, he asked, "What do you do for a living?" Alan and I arrived at the airport, and I could see the excitement on my family's faces. It was a stark contrast to how they treated me in the past. They were all smiles and eager chatter as we boarded the plane. When we arrived in Florida, Mom had already planned an elaborate itinerary. We were scheduled to visit luxury resorts, dine at high-end restaurants, and enjoy various upscale activities. The first night, we went to a fancy seafood restaurant. During dinner, Mom and Kyle were particularly interested in Alan, asking about his career and subtly hinting at future financial expectations. It was clear they were more interested in his profession than in reconnecting with me. The next day, as we visited a high-end shopping district, Mom casually mentioned that she'd been eyeing some designer bags. Since Alan is doing so well, it wouldn't hurt for him to get me one of those, don't you think? She said with an air of nonchalance. I was taken aback by her boldness, but tried to brush it off, reminding myself that we were here to make the best of the situation. Alan, ever the gentleman, managed to stay composed, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. Despite the underlying tension, the vacation had its moments of genuine enjoyment. We spent some time on the beach, and Alan and I found solace in the quieter moments away from the rest of the family. We managed to make the best of the situation, even if it felt like we were just being used as a means to fulfill my family's material desires. When the vacation ended, Mom thanked us profusely, as if our presence had been a gift rather than a choice. We returned home, and things went back to the way they were before. My family rarely reached out, and when they did, it was usually with some expectation or request. In the end, the vacation had shown me that while my family's attitude had changed due to Alan's success, the core issues remained. It was a reminder of the complex dynamics that had shaped my relationship with them. Alan and I had made it through the experience together, and it had only strengthened our bond.